Have your notes out, gentlemen. This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History, Monday, the 31st of January, 2022. We have just done the quiz for Baker's Chapter 6 and 7a. Civil War is now the name of the game in terms of Roman politics. It's not about votes. It's not about speeches. It's not even about political assassination, like in the case of the Gracchi. From the time of Marius and Sulla, Roman politics is going to be played out on the battlefield with private armies of general/patrons. The Republic, gentlemen, is dying. A republic that fights its political battles with armies is a republic that is not working. So, the first triumvirate is the first formal attempt. It's the first formal attempt to give some stability to this new situation. Instead of one general trying to win all the power for himself, three generals will come together and combine their power in the streets with the proletariats, their power in the Senate and with their money, and their power with their armies on the battlefield. Pompey the Great, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, is the senior member of the first triumvirate. They didn't call it the first triumvirate, of course. They just called it the triumvirate for obvious reasons. Whose claim to fame was wiping out the pirates across the Mediterranean Sea and conquering the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. Marcus Licinius Crassus, on the other hand, is famous for using the fire brigades of Rome in order to become the wealthiest man of his time, and in doing so is basically the closest thing to a genuine mafia leader come to total power that Rome has thus far known. But Roman emperors, while depicted in the movies as being British, upper-class, stiff upper-lipped people, are actually much close to mafiosi than anything else as and after the Roman Republic falls. Crassus becomes glorious, to the extent he ever does, by defeating Spartacus's rebellion, and then by attempting to conquer Parthia, at which he massively fails, getting 4 legions lost at the Battle of Carrhae. Legions, their eagles, his life in the desert between what is today called Iraq and Syria. Marcus Licinius Crassus, ladies and gentlemen, the second of the first triumvirate. And now, the third, Gaius Julius Caesar, as a teenager, is captured by pirates while on a grand tour, held hostage by them, demands that his asking price be doubled, and when he is in the process of being released by the pirates, he tells them that he'll hunt them down and kill them all. To which they laugh, because it's just ridiculous and funny. until he does it.
Uh-oh.
At which point it's not so funny for the pirates anymore, but by then it's too late. When he comes to power as the third junior member of the first triumvirate, Caesar decides that he is going to win glory by expanding the Roman world into northwestern Europe by moving north of the Riviera coast of France on the Mediterranean Sea, what is now France, and conquering the rest of Gaul, which is everything west of the Rhine and north of the Swiss Alps, which includes today's countries of France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Holland, and the Rhineland of Western Germany. But that's not all. Caesar also receives raids from the Germans into what is newly Roman Gaul. So he marches his armies into Germany and beats on them until they stop fighting. Which is, by the way, how you win a war. You kill the enemy until nobody is willing to be your enemy in the open anymore. That's how you know who wins. But you can't just stop people. Yes, you can. You can't kill your way to paradise, maybe, but you can kill your way to victory. When smart people stop taking up arms against you and grumble instead of battle, you've won. They may still hate you, but it doesn't matter, because they're going to shut up and do what they're told, at least most of the time. So Caesar gets the Germans to be pacific for a generation or two, which is not nothing, because they're Germans. And yes, I'm speaking in terms of national stereotypes, because national stereotypes don't come from nowhere. The Germans do have a tendency towards being both compulsive about details and militaristically warlike. Yep, they do. Just as the French have a penchant for thinking themselves romantic gods among mortal men, and for being pretentious and even pompous. Not that that would ever matter, because, never mind, I could go on and on about the French. I'm not going to. Just look at their society and look at their history and draw your own conclusions. Oh, Paris in springtime. Yes.
Oh, I know there's croissants.
What?
Nothing.
I didn't hear.
Well, I was just thinking of our friends, and I said I know there's croissants.
Yeah. Oh, there's the brie cheese, the croissant bread. There's the wine, lots and lots of wine, including champagne. But there's also a bunch of other things. There's also escargot, which I love, properly prepared in garlic butter, for snails. Oh, gosh, they're good. If you've never had them, look, it's like saying, oh, fish eggs, they're disgusting. No, fish eggs are pretty good. And sushi, it's just cut up raw fish. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. So, yeah, some of the weirdest things turn out to be tasty food if they're properly prepared.
That's true.
And again, most anything in a garlic butter sauce is probably going to taste good. Most anything.
Ice cream, wouldn't it?
Depends on the flavor. There are actually savory flavors of ice cream that are eaten around the world. Not by Americans. We eat sweet. But by others. Believe it or not. Broccoli ice cream. That's the good stuff. Avocado, how was it?
It was like soy sauce.
Yeah. Okay, well that makes sense. I like avocado. Yeah, okay, avocado ice cream. Yes.
In Japan, they prepare raw chicken, and it's you're given it like a time limit though. It's like they make it immediately, and then they give it to you, and you have like a certain amount of time before they just take it.
No, and that makes total sense. Actually, sushi is supposed to be eaten right after it's prepared. You don't wait around. So this idea of sitting there and talking over the no. It's brought. You eat it because freshness every second matters.
It's raw fish.
It's raw fish. That's right. And chicken's even more dangerous than fish, actually. With chicken, I forget what the poultry disease is.
Salmonella.
Salmonella, that's right. You don't want salmonella. It's a very unpleasant way to suffer and die. What?
Salmon isn't fish.
No, salmonella.
I know.
Or then there's also Sam and Ella, who are like a couple, but you don't want to go out to eat with them at KFC. I went to KFC, but never mind. It's a phonetic joke. Sam and Ella. So, what's one thing? Okay, Caesar not only spanks the Germans until they stop fighting for a while, he crosses the English Channel and spanks the British Celtic tribes until they stop crossing the English Channel and raiding. So Caesar has managed to intimidate the Gauls and the Germans and conquer, the Brits and the Germans, and he conquers Gaul. This is major. But none of this would matter to Roman politics if Caesar had allowed himself to be forgotten. So what did Caesar do to prevent that? What did Caesar do to keep himself uppermost in the minds of many Romans? Raise your hand, George.
He wrote letters back to Rome.
And these letters are together called?
That's a good question.
The letters.
George.
Caesar's narrative.
Close. Commentaries on the Gallic Wars. Caesar's Commentaries on the Gallic Wars. That's my name. I know you knew it. You just didn't know the name. So Caesar, in the midst of this foreign conquest, has become like a mythic figure, semi-mythic, to the people of Rome, who kick back and have some wine and eat some bread with garlic, with olive oil, while hearing a good storyteller tell the story of what Caesar did this week or this month. And it's exciting. So Caesar has managed to play things very, very, very well. Now, Gaul is conquered. His men are older. And he's got a choice to make. Since Marius and Sulla's time, the Senate of Rome has promulgated a law, with Pompey's encouragement, by the way, that all Roman armies must disband if they are coming home to demobilize with their general. So you cannot, according to Roman law, have another General Sulla land his army in Italy and attack Rome. That's against the law now. Shaved my mustache this morning. I've got one mustache here that's being naughty. Going places, a mustache.
We can snip it off.
Yeah, well, if I find it, I'm going to rip it out, actually. Anyway, but I'm going to try not to find it in front of you because that would be kind of disgusting. What did you learn this morning? Mr. Junior, never mind. Mustache hairs are unpleasant. So
can we dye your beard?
No. No. God is dyeing my beard gray. It used to be almost a black brown, and now it's very light gray.
So pink's not your color?
No, nor is purple, nor is orange.
You're wearing yellow. You're wearing orange.
Yeah. No, plaid I would consider, but
if you could find someone to dye, if we could find someone to dye your beard plaid.
No. Absolutely not. The closest I come is sometimes on field days I have allowed people to paint an alien face or a smiley face on my head. But I have to be careful that the sun isn't too bad because then I end up with that as my suntan all summer, which has happened on 2 occasions.
Okay,
not one, 2.
You don't want to dye, but can we put glitter in your hair?
Yeah.
No, again, my gray hair is it. So
they have these things called tattoos. They're like tattoos, but they're from.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. The fact that somebody marketed that as a product is just funny. I came up with that in the 90s. And I'm sure people came up with that in ancient times. It's like, oh, let's paint his head. Okay. But not mine. Caesar has to make a decision. If Caesar obeys the law, see, the border of Italy, as far as this law is concerned, is the Rubicon River, which is south of the Po River Valley, right near where the leg of Italy leaves the torso of Europe. If we cross the Rubicon together, me, you, my legionaries, we are in violation of Roman law. So let's play it out. We obey Roman law. We get to the Rubicon, we disband, we all put on civilian clothes, we go back home. Okay, you guys understand that your retirement is from me, not the government. I pay. What's going to happen to me when we get back to Rome? Well, Pompey controls Rome. Pompey controls the streets of Rome. And with Crassus dead, the only person standing between Pompey and total power, c'est moi, is me. So, what's going to happen if I return to Rome without you all in uniform is that I will probably accidentally fall on somebody's sword a few dozen times. Oops. Or a rock will land on me because something just gave way. Gosh darn. Or I'll be accused of a crime and evidence will be there that'll force me to be disgraced and executed. It's not going to be pretty. Why? Because I'm really unlucky, and they all laugh, or because something's got to happen to me for Pompey to continue to be the only guy in power. He doesn't want to share. Of course, if we go back together, we're going to be in violation of Roman law. And in a case like that, it's victory or death time. If we win, we change the law retroactively, and it doesn't matter. If we lose, we're not only going to be dead, we're going to be disgraced. I'm going to go to my tent to think on it, sleep on it. Well, yeah, I'll think about it during the night. In the morning, I'll give you my decision. And of course, he gives this speech to his men with the idea that they have their own ideas. Because he's the one that's going to pay their retirement. They don't want anything to happen to him. Because if something happens to him, they don't get paid. So the next morning, he comes out of his tent and he says, gosh, I was up all night thinking about this very weighty decision. But, made my decision. Cross the Rubicon! Now! And the army marches across. And when he goes across, he says famously, the die is cast. So, he has cast his die. That means he's thrown his dice. And history will determine how that dice turns out. And he marches his army into Italy. Crossing the Rubicon is something that all educated people should know. It's an expression that means you've crossed a line beyond which you cannot go back. When you've crossed the Rubicon, you've gone outside the rules, and you're either going to change the rules by winning power, or you're going to lose and be disgraced. Crossing the Rubicon, you do something that you can't apologize for and take back. It's something that's once done cannot be undone. Capiche? Understand? Good. So, Caesar literally crosses the Rubicon. And it's time to conquer or die. Now, at first, Pompey looks like he's in an incredibly strong position. He's got the people of Rome. He seems to have the garrison of Rome. The Senate's behind him. They see Caesar as a usurper. They call him a lawbreaker. But Caesar's men are in the streets. And excuse the somewhat dirty thing that's going to be said, it's authentically Roman. Caesar's men in the streets are singing a new song. Homeward comes the bald whoremonger. Romans, lock your wives away. And what that means is Caesar's coming. And if he has to come with force, his men are going to have some fun with your wives. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's Caesar. Believe it or not, this actually begins to spread some terror. But that's not all. The troops in northern Italy between Rome and Caesar either defect to Caesar's side or melt away. Nobody wants to fight him. After all, this is a guy who's really good at being... He's not Crassus. He's not a trumped-up general. He's a real general. And he's good. So, all of a sudden, Pompey is in a position where if he stays in Rome, he's probably going to be captured. But he also makes a mistake. Had he bluffed it out and stayed in Rome, he might have been able to pull off a negotiated peace. He might have even been able to bluff Caesar into defeat. But Pompey is afraid of being captured by Caesar. So Pompey leaves Rome, going south. By leaving Rome, Pompey gives up the Senate, he gives up the courts, he gives up the streets, and he gives up any pretense that he had to be the only legitimate government in Rome. By giving up Rome, Pompey actually goes a long way to losing this civil war. He considers fighting in southern Italy, but then realizes that his real forces are massing in Greece. So Pompey leaves Italy for Greece. Pompey's senatorial allies include Marcus Porcius Cato the Younger, who's an old man at this point, but he's still the younger, and the descendant of Scipio Africanus. Scipio and Cato, the two real old Republicans who want to restore the Republic and don't like any of these triumvirate things, they go to the new city of Carthage in North Africa to raise an army of their own. Caesar takes his army and crosses to Greece. Meanwhile, Caesar's agents are now in charge of Rome. And it's Pompey who's seen as the lawbreaker, not Caesar. At Pharsalus in Greece, and all of these great civil war battles, for whatever reason, are fought in or around Greece. At Pharsalus in Greece, on the Greek mainland, Caesar's old, grizzled, oatmeal-eating Roman military veterans are meeting the flower of the Roman aristocracy, the rich boys, in their shiny clothes, their shiny armor and such. Beautiful horses. It's like an army of dirty old men facing an army of male supermodels. And what Caesar says before the Battle of Pharsalus is these guys are such fancy boys. They are so vain. What you should do is aim for their faces. Aim for their faces. And to avoid getting a scar, they will instinctively cover their face. Which means you got them. Go for their faces, boys. And that's what happened. These tough little old men who've been marching with Caesar for over a decade. These guys have not an ounce of fat on them. They are just gristle and muscle and bone. They're not pretty, but they're functional. They do the job. Pompey's army is crushed, and Pompey flees to Egypt. Now, Egypt at this point is in the hands of the Greek Ptolemies, descendants of Alexander's general Ptolemy. It seems to be ruled by a Ptolemy who's 14 years old, a little overweight, and is a bit of a nerd, a schlub. Pompey lands. The Greek advisors of Ptolemy, Ptolemy's the Egyptian 14-year-old, Pompey's the old Roman, decide that they're going to give Caesar a special gift because they know Caesar's following. So Caesar lands in Alexandria, the capital at that time of Egypt. And his troops march up to the palace. And the king receives Caesar and then gives Caesar his gift. A platter comes out, covered. And they lift the platter, and it's the head of Pompey. The severed head of Pompey. Now, what the 14-year-old Egyptian Ptolemy was told was that Caesar was Pompey's enemy, and that Caesar will appreciate this gesture. But Caesar actually loses it, whether it's theatrics or real or both. How dare you! This was a Roman! This was a man who was a hero! This was a man who kept your father king of Egypt. He swept the pirates from the seas. He was a Roman citizen. Not even the least Roman citizen should be treated like this. And Caesar storms out. And it looks like Caesar's going to just conquer Egypt just out of anger. And the kid's like, oh. And his advisors are like, well, what Caesar finds out is that Egypt is actually being contested between 14-year-old Ptolemy and his older sister, Cleopatra. Cleopatra's 16 or 17. Now, that night, in Caesar's barracks, a carpet, rolled up, big oriental carpet, is carried by a bunch of slaves and brought into Caesar's personal chamber. Caesar says, "What's this?" And they say, "It's a gift from," they call her Queen Cleopatra the Seventh. And they carefully place it and then roll it open. And out, in a little French girl pose, is Queen Cleopatra. Now, Cleopatra, according to her coinage, is not the most classically beautiful woman. She's got quite a nose. She's Greek. But she has been trained by the courtesans of the storied East at the art of seducing and ruling men through seduction. She is beautiful. And 16 or 17. Caesar is handsome and charismatic at about 40. And she proceeds to seduce Caesar. It's very clearly her seducing him. And they become lovers. Soon, Ptolemy is out. Caesar's army fights their way in. But in the process of getting rid of Ptolemy, huge sections of the library at Alexandria are burned, which Cleopatra bemoans, and Caesar says it's the way war is fought. In any event, Cleopatra the Seventh is now undisputed queen of Egypt, and Caesar lives there for a while and has some fun. But you don't rule the Roman world from Alexandria in Egypt. So, Caesar goes back to Rome to take power. And they make Caesar dictator for life, sort of like Sulla, and a few other offices. Now, Caesar is unusual. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. While Caesar is in Egypt, the senators and their army in North Africa, in Carthage, realize that, well, they fight and they lose to one of Caesar's minions. And so Caesar offers Cato and Scipio clemency. He is famous for offering his enemies a deal: peace, clemency, partnership. Brutus, Marcus Brutus, the descendant of the man who leads the conspiracy against the last king Tarquin of the Etruscans. Marcus Brutus, of this storied legendary family, was a great supporter of Pompey until he deserted Pompey when Pompey left for Greece. Caesar welcomes Brutus as a long-lost son, and Caesar treats Brutus like a long-lost son. Caesar treats Brutus in many ways better than his own general Mark Antony or his own nephew Octavian. Caesar offers the senators clemency. They both kill themselves. To this day, the Cato Institute, a conservative think tank in Washington, is named after Marcus Porcius Cato the Younger because he heroically decided, I would rather die at my own hand than live under a dictatorship, a travesty of Rome and its republic. So the senators kill themselves. Caesar says, no loss, and goes back to Rome and ends up running things. However, there's a moment that Shakespeare famously recounts or references in his play, Julius Caesar. It seems clear that however generous and magnanimous Caesar seems, that he wants to be king. He just can't wait to be king, to quote a song from Simba. I assume you mean the animated version and not the computer generated.
Oh, God.
The animated version is good. I like that movie.
I cried.
I will not even see the CGI version. It's like seeing the live action of Mulan. Ugh. Anyway, this is a problem. And Senator Cassius convinces Marcus Brutus, who's being treated like Caesar's most beloved heir, that Caesar is in fact trying to be king. Because Caesar goes to the gladiator games, to the arena. But Caesar is unpopular, makes himself a bit unpopular with the people. Because while at the games, they're called the games, instead of paying rapt attention to the gladiator fights, he does paperwork and only looks up occasionally when people are asking for thumbs up or thumbs down. And the people don't like that. They want a guy who's a man of the people. So Caesar doesn't do himself any favors, but his agents are in the crowd. And at one point in the games, between fights, the crowd says, "Caesar Rex! Caesar Rex! Caesar Rex! King Caesar! King Caesar! King Caesar!" And Caesar stands and they're cheering and they're saying, "Take the crown, take the..." And Caesar says, "No! This is a republic! No!" And he sits down. And then an hour or so later, Caesar Rex, Caesar Rex, Caesar Rex, Caesar Rex, King Caesar, take the crown. And he gets up and he says, "Oh, you guys, no, that would be wrong. No, we're a republic." And then they're stopped for about, and then a third time they offer him the crown, and even more reluctantly he refuses. So it's clear that Caesar is ginning up support for himself at some point to be named king of Rome. At least it's clear to a lot of Romans. And what's the law? The law is no kings in Rome. The law is kill them right away and justify it after the fact. Now, if anyone openly tries to kill Caesar, there are a few problems. First off, the people of Rome. Despite the fact that they are irritated by him not paying enough attention at the games, he pays them well. He provides them with free grain from Egypt. They're going to get fat, not working for a living on welfare grain from the Roman Caesar. Secondly, Caesar's army is still around. Third, the Senate is now in the process of being controlled by Caesar. Fourth and fifth. Fourth is Marcus Antonius, who's a bit of a thug, but he's Caesar's chief right-hand man. He's Caesar's deputy general. Mark Antony likes making people flinch. Mark Antony, for example, hates Cicero or Cicero. He likes intimidating Cicero. He likes leaning into Cicero and seeing Cicero go back. Ultimately, Antony's going to order Cicero to kill himself. And Mark Antony has a vicious streak a mile wide, and everyone knows it. And if anyone does anything to Caesar, Antony's coming for them. The last thing that's standing between anyone plotting against Caesar and actually going for it is Caesar has a nephew, a young guy in his teens named Octavian. But Octavian doesn't seem to be a manly man like Caesar. He's thin, he's studious. But Octavian is brilliant. A lot of people don't know that. He also is brave. He may be a thin little guy, but Octavian has guts. And he's got better political instincts than his uncle Caesar does. So anyone who goes after Caesar has to contend with the people of Rome, the proletariat, the army of Rome, the Senate, Mark Antony, and Octavian. This is a tough sell. This is a daunting combination. But Cassius convinces Brutus that it must be done. And Brutus, who's not the brightest bulb in the pack, but is brave and cares deeply about his family legacy, overrides any loyalty he may have to Caesar because Caesar is clearly, in his mind, trying to become king, which triggers the law. The Senate is now meeting at Pompey Theater. It is mid-March, the Ides of March. Oh, one other thing. Caesar has a wife, Calpurnia. And Caesar's wife understands that Caesar's unfaithful. As long as it's discreet, she'll put up with it like a good Roman matron. She loves him. While Caesar's in charge, before Brutus decides to come forward with his plot, Queen Cleopatra VII shows up in Rome. She not only shows up in Rome, she brings a kid named Caesarion, who she openly proclaims as Julius Caesar's son, in Rome, where Caesar's wife lives. Now, it's one thing to have an affair over, what happens in Egypt stays in Egypt, but not in Rome. Caesar is embarrassed by this because Cleopatra is clearly angling for Caesar, who doesn't have any legitimate sons of his own, to claim Caesarion as his, and so this half-Egyptian bastard, illegitimate son, will become now the hereditary prince of Rome. This is what's in her mind. She doesn't understand Romans at all. Caesar gets her the heck out of Rome as quickly as he can. But she's still there for a while, and it does a lot of damage. Calpurnia is not happy. A lot of Caesar's followers, who are publicly very straight-laced, even though privately they're very lusty, they don't like it either, because it's very indiscreet. So Caesar, he has his problems. Well, one day, as Caesar is approaching the steps to Pompey Theater, where the Senate is meeting, his bodyguards and closest followers, including Mark Antony, they all get distracted. People come up and start asking them questions. It's very natural. This is what clients do. You see, Caesar's the biggest patron in Rome, so people come up and they ask his advisors, and they're asking his advice. And suddenly, just as he goes into the theater, he's surrounded by Brutus and the conspirators, who take out their knives from their togas and all of them start stabbing into Caesar. Now, Caesar is not small, nor is he weak. Caesar starts fighting them with his bare hands, and he actually knocks a few guys down and injures a bunch. I don't know if he kills anyone. But Caesar fights them until finally Brutus, who's hesitated up to this point, is in front of Caesar and gut stabs him. And Caesar looks at Brutus and stops fighting in shock that Brutus has betrayed him. And his last words famously are, "Et tu, BRUTAE. Et tu, BRUTAE." Now, "Et tu, BRUTAE," if you remember your basic Latin, means, "Even you, Brutus?" And he dies. And the story of Caesar with "Et tu, BRUTAE" is that Brutus's betrayal broke his heart and broke his spirit to fight, and so Caesar dies. Now, I am going to tell you about the worst video game premise I have ever heard. The game was from like 2003 or 4. It was called Shadow of the Empire. Not the Star Wars novel. Shadow of the Empire is a game where you play Octavian, trying to solve the mystery of who killed Julius Caesar. It's a murder mystery about who could have done it. Now, there are two paths to this.
Wow.
You can either go the arena path and become a gladiator, which of course an upper-class Roman man would certainly do, become a gladiator and fight with condemned men in the arena, and Augustus would do, in which case he gets really buffed and big and strong, which he never was, and you get information that way, or you do stealth missions.
Wow, I guess they knew what they were talking about.
Going through Rome's palaces, sneaking your way around and strangling, knocking guards out by strangling them, by suffocating them. Now, Octavian has one clue. Caesar's last words are a mystery. What does "Et tu, BRUTAE" mean? And the game is about finding out. Now, understand something.
This is the worst.
Caesar was killed in front of hundreds of witnesses. everyone knew who did it because they proclaimed, "We, Brutus and Cassius and the others," they named themselves, "have restored the Republic." They proclaimed it, and also, Etu Brutae is in the Latin language, which is the language all Romans speak. It's not a mystery. But they still made the game. Look it up. Shadow of the Empire.
And you play as Brutus too?
You play as Octavian. Either way.
Oh.
You either are Stealth Octavian or Arena Octavian, and then you find out what Etu Brutae actually means. I don't know how many drugs you have to take to come up with a concept like that, but it's a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't Julius Caesar, or was it Augustus?
I should find out.
Didn't he take the traditional months that were all in like
Yeah.
order and then just add July and August?
Yeah. Well, Julius added July, and Augustus added
I'm
August.
gonna play that game to find out what it means.
Yeah. Good luck.
So wait, if you have any like background of history, then you just
know, but you still got to play through all the missions. You can't just come out and say, "But I know it." You got to be able to prove it.
Why didn't they just make that and then just have it be like you're like a poorer Roman or something?
No, honestly, they should have had Godzilla come in. It would have made the game more interesting. And it's historical. See you later.
Yeah.